journey for Travis County in regards to lessons learned, not just from what happened at the Capitol yesterday, but what happened in Georgia. We sent out an email saying Georgia today, Texas tomorrow, and we weren't saying that as a joke, but as a rallying cry to what year-round organizing can really do when you're talking about issues to people and engaging them about what they are concerned about, and not just putting policies forward, but also listening as a party. And so we at the Travis County Democratic Party are committed to year-round organizing. So when it comes to issues about how we treat homeless people or how we police our community, we are not fighting an uphill battle, but we are listening to everyone in our community, because regardless of the color of your skin, everyone wants to feel safe. And regardless of if you have a home or not, you are a human and you're not a criminal. And so it's important that we have those discussions within our community, because we know that it's going to be a fight at the Texas legislature. So there's a lot to be learned from Georgia, but there's a lot of work that we still have to do. It's not going to happen overnight, obviously, but something couldn't be more clear than what we saw yesterday at the US Capitol. Racism in America is alive and well, and it couldn't be a more clear black and white picture than what we saw yesterday in regards to how the Capitol Police Force dealt with people who are literally domestic terrorists attacking our government institutions. And so we are going to be looking forward to not just doing DEI trainings in the Travis County Democratic Party, but we are committed to bringing on a year-round DEI consultant to help make sure that we are not just engaging communities of color in regards to representation in our party, but we are actively listening and thinking about all communities as we make daily decisions as a party, so that everyone feels more safe and more welcome in the Democratic Party if you identify as a Democrat. And last but not least, we have a lot of action that we have to take here. And I'm so thankful that Ash Hall and Arthur Simon have stepped up to be our Legislative Task Force Committee. And they're going to be moderating today's panel with our two amazing female senators, which I am proud that we have 100% female Senate delegation from Travis County. But more importantly, they are also progressive voices who are not afraid to stand up as big Ds for little Ds in the state of Texas. And so with that, Ash, Simon, Arthur, thank you so much. I'm going to hand it over to you. And also be sure to tell folks how we can take action during this legislative session to support our delegation and to make sure that people's voices are heard when it comes to policy during the legislature. Thank you all so much. And thank you all for joining us.
Sure. I will go ahead and introduce myself first. My name is Ash Hall. My pronouns are they and them. I'm a precinct chair for 242, which is how I got involved in the Democratic Party. And I'm one of the co-chairs of our legislative task force, along with Arthur Simon, who I will let introduce himself now.
Hi, my name's Arthur Simone. It's a Cajun name. I am precinct 122. I became precinct chair right after the 2016 election. I said, F this S, let's knock some sense into the world here. And there's so much at stake, and Texas is just kind of, well, it's the center of my universe, but I know it's the center of so many economic and cultural issues, just right there at the vanguard. We have space, who knew? We are working on this legislative task force with a bunch of other precinct chairs. And if you're here in the windows, if you want to wave, there are a lot of us present right now. Hello, gang. So the purpose of this legislative task force is to really be here as a resource for our delegation, for our Travis County delegation specifically. Our agenda is your agenda, and we are here to maybe try to cut through some of the uncertainties, the fog of just too much information, just the information dump that is TLO online, and to make some sense of y'all's agenda, how it works with our House delegation agenda, and how it works with the governor's agenda. I mean, the questions are numerous, and we have
You muted yourself.
Hello, can you hear me again?
Yes.
I'm sorry about that. Sorry, not sorry, because I'm going to just keep talking and say that last night was kind of stunning and shocking, if not surprising at all, because it's been a slow, long train wreck. And so if we want to squeeze some of these questions about specific policies together, maybe we can make a little bit more room for our state senators to respond to madness, epic Greek tragic madness. So back to Ash.
Right, thank you. And just to add to this, the task force also exists to make sure that people feel like they can become plugged into legislative advocacy and make their voices heard and support the folks in the Austin delegation who are working each day to get these bills passed. We also do work together to try to stop harmful bills. So feel free to get involved with us. Our contact information should be available somewhere at some point, and folks will be able to join in on our efforts, and we can get a lot done together. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Senator Judith Zaffirini. So Senator Zaffirini represents Senate District 21, which is an absolutely colossal district that stretches from the Rio Grande Valley to Austin and includes Laredo and just a huge expansive area. She is the first ever Hispanic woman to be elected to the Texas State Senate, second senior most member of the state Senate, serves on super important committees, including state affairs, which is actually one of the reasons that I've gotten to know her pretty well and have a deep affinity for her, because I've always been able to count on the senator to defend the LGBTQ community. And fun fact, she has been awarded over 1,000 awards based on her service and has a library that is named after her. Senator Zaffirini, feel free to go ahead and tell us a bit about your legislative agenda for this session.
Thank you so much, Ash, for that very warm and generous introduction. And Senator Eckhardt, for your friendship and service as Travis County Judge and now as Senator, thank God. And to the Travis County Democratic Party, your leadership, precinct chairs, organizers, and volunteers, all for hosting this forum and inviting us to join you today. I'm Judith Zaffirini, State Senator for District 21, which includes much of Southeast Travis County, including Austin, Del Valle, Creedmoor, and Mustang Ridge. I'm delighted to join you today to offer a preview of this year's legislative session from the Senate's perspective, what we should expect, what challenges we'll face, and what issues Democratic senators will champion. To begin with, if you're interested in interacting directly with lawmakers, please be prepared for significant obstacles. They likely will include building-wide capacity limits, mandatory mask wearing and testing for entry, and requiring witnesses to register days in advance and to prove they've been tested. Despite these challenges, my staff and I, and Senator Eckhardt and her team, I'm sure, are committed to hearing your perspectives. I'm joined today by some of my key staff members, including my Chief of Staff, Jorge Ramirez, and please wave Jorge, others wave as I call you, Iris Guerrero, Chris Willen, David Barrera, and Laura Felix, so that you can meet them and have access to them too. Feel free to contact us at any time. We expect several rule changes, including lowering the number of votes required to bring up a bill from 19 to 18, which, by the way, equals the number of Republican senators. We also expect a more structured and more limited schedule, fewer committee hearings, and ultimately, less legislation passed. Our greatest challenge will be the budget. Because of the pandemic's impact on sales taxes, oil and gas revenues, and other revenue streams, we face a significant budget deficit. The latest estimate from this summer was $4.6 billion for the current biennium, although there is some hope that things have improved since then, and we have approximately $10 billion in the rainy day fund. We're required to pass a balanced budget, which means we'll have to find new revenues, make cuts, or both. Count me among the members who believe strongly we should explore every option, but avoid making painful cuts to education or to health and human services. This means we should draw down any federal funds we can find, especially by expanding Medicaid, which has a 90-10 federal state match. Medicaid expansion would bring in more than $100 billion over 10 years, improve healthcare access for 1.4 million Texans, including thousands of children, and protect our rural hospitals. In November, I filed Senate Joint Resolution 11, which would allow Texans to vote on Medicaid expansion. If passed by the legislature, I'm very confident that that proposed constitutional amendment would be adopted by Texas voters. We also should be using our rainy day fund aggressively. If this isn't a rainy day, what is? And we should explore new revenue options our colleagues have proposed, provided they do not create burdens for struggling families and small businesses. Even if those proposals were adopted, however, we probably also would still need to make cuts. My priorities, and I'm confident I can safely say, Senate Democrats' priorities are simple. Avoid cuts to education, to higher education, and to healthcare. Slashing the budgets of these critical services certainly would turn a short-term crisis into a long-term catastrophe. Beyond the budget, however, my priorities have not changed. I have pre-filed 42 bills with many more in development. These would support our public schools and teachers, including our retired teachers, promote access, affordability, and excellence in higher education, create jobs and develop our infrastructure, expand access to healthcare, especially for the very young, the very old, the very poor, persons with disabilities, and veterans. They also would protect workers from exploitation, preserve our environment and alleviate climate change, promote universal broadband access, and ensure access to justice for all Texans. My Senate Bills 33 and 34, for example, would provide tuition-free higher education for Texans with household incomes of less than $100,000. And my Senate Bill 37 would provide universal, high-quality, full-day pre-K for all 3- and 4-year-olds. Can you imagine how transformative that would be, not only for Travis County, but also for communities throughout the state? Of particular importance to us as Democrats, our once predicted redistricting probably will be delayed because we're not expected to receive census data before we adjourn on May 31st. We're required to redistrict during the first regular session after we receive the data, so redistricting could be delayed until 2023. The Lieutenant Governor, however, has indicated the governor will call a special session for this purpose next summer. We've been told not to make any travel plans. From my perspective as the senator for District 21, I would love for our district to remain exactly as it is. Whether you support or oppose this configuration, I would love to know your preferences. My priorities include keeping Southeast Travis County with our other 17 counties, and I certainly hope you agree. I'm confident Senator Eckhardt and I will work together beautifully, and that we can do so much together to advance our democratic agenda. Count on my staff and me to continue our open door policy, or at least an open virtual door policy, and to be accessible to you. Although we are working remotely, the phones are forwarded to our cell phones, and we prioritize responding to every letter, email, phone call, and meeting request from constituents. Feel free to contact us whenever we may be of assistance. I also encourage you to subscribe to my e-newsletter and to follow my page on Facebook, on which I post daily updates about the pandemic, legislation, and of course, my darling grandsons, Asher and George. Thank you again for the opportunity to join you today and to represent some of you in the Texas Senate. I look forward to working with you and with Senator Eckhardt and our colleagues in the House and Senate to address the challenges created by this pandemic and to build a more equitable, just, and compassionate Texas. My prayer is that the Lord will bless you always, protect you from harm, and inspire you to continue to excel, especially for our Democratic Party. Thank you so much for allowing me to share a few thoughts with you.
Okay, so thank you, Senator Zaffirini, and congratulations on your reelection this year.
Thank you.
And we all hope that we are able to see similar districts emerge from this. But speaking of districts, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Judge Eckhardt, now Senator Eckhardt, who represents my district, Senate District 14. So hello, I'm your constituent. I believe that my precinct 122 in East Austin is probably better than all the other ones, but you don't have to take sides just yet.
Norma is really upset about what you just said.
Senator Eckhardt follows in the footsteps of a great leader in Senator Kirk Watson, who has stepped down, and Sarah Eckhardt, Judge Eckhardt, was our Travis County judge and won the special election to fill his seat. We are very excited to be working with you. I think that you and Senator Zaffirini make a great combo of somebody who has really low numbered legislation because she's been around a while, and somebody who has a very fresh take on the process and on the people involved in legislation, especially at the Senate level, which is as mysterious to me as it probably is to many people here. So maybe there can be some myths dispelled as we talk on and on and on. But for now, I just want to hand this over to Senator Eckhardt. Congratulations on your election, and we're looking forward to seeing what you do.
Thank you so much, Arthur. And thank you so much to Senator Zaffirini. Senator Zaffirini and I, Senator Zaffirini as the senior senator from Travis County, I have been working with her for some time now on a myriad of issues. And I'm so thrilled to be able to work with her and to learn from her in my new capacity as a very junior senator. So I deeply appreciate you all inviting me to give the party a sneak peek at what we expect to happen in the legislature, but I'm going to be completely frank with you. I have no idea what this legislative session is going to look like. First, it's not going to look like any other legislative session before, and I haven't been in any of the legislative sessions before. So I'm going to be relying heavily on my mentor, Judith Zaffirini, and I deeply, deeply appreciate her willingness to take on a pupil like myself. I can tell you, though, that neither one of us have high expectations for the level of adaptation necessary in COVID-19 to make this as productive a session as it could be. The leadership remains in denial about the severity of the pandemic and has simply not made the kind of adaptations in advance for us to have as robust a session as the state of Texas really needs. I know I'm preaching to the choir when I say that if Texas were its own state, I believe we're still at number 9 in gross domestic product worldwide if we were our own state, and yet we meet only every other year for 140 days. And this year it's going to be even less productive simply because of the time squeeze and the circumstances that we're operating in. Senator Zaffirini and I, along with all the rest of the senators, will continue to meet face-to-face, continue to be required to deliberate and to vote in person. And even with the restrictions that are being placed on people coming into the building, that's still a tremendous number of people gathering from all over the state inside a single structure. And so we do anticipate there are going to be some issues for our district. Senate District 14 is already seeing a higher number of hospitalizations than we've seen at any other time in the pandemic. And we are now having the Lollapalooza of politics the state's version of the Lollapalooza of politics about to occur right in the Central Business District. So I want to prepare us for that. This is going to be a strange time. In terms of advocacy, of course, the best way to advocate is to communicate. And how are we communicating during COVID-19? So in terms of advocacy, I know none of y'all are strangers to this. So it's not optimal, but emails and phone calls. Emails and phone calls are going to be the best way to do this. And I have Billy Bagala, my communications director, is on the Zoom. Peter Einhorn, my chief of staff, my longtime chief of staff, is also on the Zoom as well. And also Sara Gonzalez-Clater, who's one of my policy analysts, is also on this phone call. So Peter, I think, has already put his email into the chat. Feel free to reach out. I'm going to go ahead and hit send on my email too. Call us, email us, and also I'm going to continue with my coffee jolts, but I'm going to do them weekly as a pale replacement for the in-person drop-bys that I find so gratifying. Coffee jolts and in-person drop-bys are the way that I get my marching orders from you all, the way I find out what my assignments are, and also the way I test out some of the ideas to see if they're truly workable. So it's not optimal, but we are going to a weekly coffee jolt and also 2 policy pints a month. So for those of you who don't want to get up early and drink coffee, come to a policy pint twice a month, anytime in those 2 slots, so that we can approximate the kind of accessibility that we would really prefer. In terms of legislative priorities, Senator Zaffirini hit the nail on the head. This is going to be a very strange time from a revenue perspective. The state of Texas, the leadership in the state of Texas for the last 20 years has pretty much starved our revenue sources and made our opportunity infrastructure pretty darn shaky, pretty thin. We absolutely need Medicaid expansion. Senator Zaffarini's bill is fabulous, and it's exactly what we need. Unfortunately, Republicans are going to need cover to come on board with Medicaid expansion, and a referendum is the way to give them that cover. I will tell you that I have rode the coattails of some very good polling on Medicaid expansion, and it polls very well among Republicans and Democrats, rural and urban, and also the straight up message of, we already paid for this health care. Why is the Republican leadership keeping us from getting this health care, is the message that polls highest. So there is some hope that we will be able to pass Senator Zaffarini's bill. And we really need y'all's help. Keep pushing. Also, broadband, another issue that I think has broad bipartisan support. It's going to be very technical. Senator Nichols has been looking at this for some time, and I certainly will be looking at it too from a technical standpoint, all of the right-of-way and the utility aspects of it, the social justice aspects of it, the finance aspects of it. And I imagine universal broadband is going to be something that we will be working on for some time. But I do think that that has a high bipartisan appeal as well. Criminal justice reform. I do believe that we are going to be able to push through some things on criminal justice reform. We must keep going on criminal justice reform. It has a tendency to slide off the front page and people stop paying attention when it is a life and death matter on a daily basis for many of us. So we will stay on that criminal justice platform. And I guarantee you that, given my background as a former prosecutor and also having been with the county for so long, that is our apparatus to deliver justice, you have my commitment that I will not take my eyes off of the criminal justice reform platform. I will keep working that, trying to push through every innovation that we can find to make us a little bit more just. Including some revenue sources. I do believe that there will come a day in this legislative session or some future legislative session that the revenue generating capacity for the decriminalization of cannabis will become an item with legs. As a former prosecutor, I also believe it needs to be appropriately regulated, and that people who are a public safety threat because they are intoxicated on marijuana and are driving around should continue to be prosecuted, and we will need to come up with a blood content definition for marijuana intoxication, not because the substance itself will be illegal, but because of the behavior from using it that puts people at public safety threat should be regulated. So that's a little bit about what's going to go on in the legislative session. But like I said, haven't been there yet. It's going to be a session like no other. And so please keep in contact with me. Tell me your thoughts, give me your ideas. And as I've said before, I love compliments, and sometimes your criticisms are actually more useful to me. So don't hesitate. Give it to me straight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator Eckhardt. We are really racing through our time, so let's try to be tight and succinct with what time that we do have. I think that Medicaid expansion is just so important for the bottom line, for the budget, and it kind of encompasses so much of the reform that needs to happen here in Austin. So maybe Senator Zaffirini, you could speak a little bit more about your amendment, but maybe also explain the difference between that and Senator Johnson's SB 117 and, you know, the wide range of other Medicaid bills that we're seeing from a bunch of different senators, a bunch of different representatives. Can this finally happen this session? Is there a better than a 50-50 chance that Medicaid expansion can pass in this session? How do we get there?
Well, I'm not sure about the 50-50 because I would hate to guess and then be wrong. So I don't know about 50-50, but I do believe that the opportunity to pass it looks stronger than ever. And I'll tell you why, because we need the revenue. That is why. And the fact of the matter is that if you look at Medicaid expansion over the years, many of us have advocated for it so long, and yet we have lost every battle, bar none. And basically, we realize that so many of the people who care about healthcare for either low-income families or for children prefer CHIP, the Children's Health Insurance Program, to Medicaid. And the reason for that is obvious. It's easier to support children than it is to support low-income persons or persons with disabilities, or especially low-income pregnant women. So CHIP takes much of the attention, and yet both of the programs are exceedingly important. The other reason CHIP has been more important to date is that it has had a 75-25 match from the federal government, where Medicaid tends to have something closer to 60-40, but Medicaid expansion has a 90-10% match. So imagine how much we could bring in, $100 billion over the next 10 years, if we simply expand Medicaid. The problem is that so many members, no Democratic senator I know of or have known has opposed it, but so many members in the Senate have opposed Medicaid expansion in the past. As Senator Eckhardt mentioned a while ago, the time seems right, but some of the members need cover. And that is why Senator Johnson's bill is an excellent bill. And in fact, I believe that he'll have a suite of bills. His bills are broader, and they address other issues beyond Medicaid. They focus on prevention, and they focus on how healthcare should be distributed. They focus on funding. His bill is much, much broader, and it's excellent, but it's a process, it's a work in progress. He has not completed it. My bill simply calls for expanding it to 138% of the poverty level and letting the people vote on it. And that's why Senator Eckhardt said some members need cover. And that's what I believe might make it more likely to pass, because we're not actually passing Medicaid expansion. We're letting the people decide. And every poll I know of indicates that the people of Texas support Medicaid expansion. So that is why I hope that it's likely to pass. I know Senator Johnson is working very, very hard on it, and there are a number of House bills. I believe there will be more bills. But if I recall correctly, I have passed something like 30 bills over the years related strictly to Medicaid and different aspects of Medicaid. It's an issue that's very close to my heart, and I will continue to work for it. We certainly would need your support. Now, you might think, well, our two senators agree, so it has a greater likelihood to pass. Well, remember that in Travis County, we have 5 senators. We also have Senator Campbell, and we have Senator Buckingham, and we have Senator Schwartner. So the problem will be when we talk about the Travis County delegation, that if the 2 Democrats are supporting something for Travis County, but the 3 Republican senators who represent parts of Travis are not, then we have a problem. And so particularly on Medicaid expansion, it's important to us that we reach out, especially to the doctors in the Senate, Dr. Campbell and Dr. Buckingham and Dr. Schwertner, and get their support. And I'm hoping that at the very, very least, they will join us in allowing the people to vote. And if the 5 Travis County senators were united, the outcome would look mighty, mighty good.
Thank you so much. And obviously you can count on our support as
Thank
we
you.
try to push that legislation through. Next question is for Senator Eckhardt. Obviously, one of the biggest policy gaps that we've seen throughout the pandemic has been in terms of our education system, the way that we need to support it versus the way that the state actually is supporting it. So my question for you is, what does the legislature need to do to support public education in the time of COVID?
I think for this legislative session, the most probable positioning for us is to maintain the status quo after the passage of House Bill 3. House Bill 3 was a huge step forward in many respects. In a global perspective, and certainly from a democratic perspective, it was a drop in the bucket of where we should be in public education. We have, as I said before, allowed our opportunity infrastructure to erode pretty significantly in the state of Texas, and that includes our public education system. But House Bill 3 was a big leap forward in terms of the Texas legislature. And given the really serious depletion in state coffers due to COVID-19, the idea of getting us beyond House Bill 3 is small, infinitesimal, unrealistic, but holding it is realistic. And I think that there is bipartisan support to hold it, because a lot of political clout, a lot of political sacrifice on the Republican side went into passing House Bill 3. And they don't want to see that rolled back. Where we need to really work this legislative session is to make sure that there are no inroads by out-of-district charters. I have no issue with in-district charters. In-district charters are perfectly fine if a school board chooses to invite a charter into the district. Why not experiment? But where we are seeing erosion in the public school system, but I 100% agree that the financial resources that are dedicated to public education at the state level are inadequate long-term. They're not sustainable. We will need to be looking for future revenue sources that are sustainable, and also a way to right-size the regulatory regime around those resources. It's pretty darn Byzantine. For a party that says that government overreach is something that they're against, wow. The K through 12 financial system is pretty darn Byzantine.
Well, thank you, Senator Eckhardt, and apologies to anyone from Byzantium that is on the call right now. Senator Zaffirini, we have seen quite an election. And I think that, sorry about that. And I think that the Republicans are gunning for Travis County on so many fronts. How do you feel about election reform? How do you feel about, there's a constitutional amendment calling for Congress to regulate campaign finance reform. It feels like there's so much coming at us so fast on so many levels, and you're the tip of the spear. So do you have any thoughts or advice on just general election and campaign reform?
Well, you know what they love to say in the legislature, at least in the Texas Senate, about Travis County in the state of Texas, it's the blueberry in the bowl of tomato soup. They love to say that. And of course, there are some people who, for some reason, have some degree of hostility toward Travis County. I frankly love Travis County. I am delighted to be the senator for Southeast Travis, absolutely delighted. But not everybody shares my affection. And so there has been some negativity toward the county. There is some concern that some of the policies adopted by the local leaders are much too liberal, and they clash with those preferred by the conservative members of the legislature. But I, for one, believe in local control. I strongly support local control. And frankly, I never, ever take a stand on a local issue without first checking not only with constituents, but also with elected leaders. Because the elected members of the city council and other local offices and the county judge and commissioners and other county offices are the ones closest to the people in any county, not a senator who represents 18 or 20 or 25 counties. And so we need to work very closely with those local leaders and understand what their position is on every particular issue and deal with them. Now, I'll be frank with you. I, for one, do not like to write letters or to pass resolutions instructing Congress what to do. And the reason for that is that through experience, I have learned that many, many times when city councils and county commissioners pass resolutions and send them to us, by the time we in the legislature receive them, the bill's already been voted on. It's either already passed or already dead. And so then people laugh about it. I do not, but there are people who do. So think how long it would take to pass a joint resolution of the Texas legislature and then send it to Congress. Of course, they move a lot slower than we do, but by the time they get it, it might be outdated. And then think of a senator at the United States level, at the federal level, who represents 254 counties. And so how receptive is that person going to be from receiving a letter written by a senator or representative or a resolution passed by state legislators? Many would think, well, let the state legislators take their own action and let them leave the federal government to us. So I very seriously believe that many times the state resolutions do not have the impact on Congress that we wish they would or that we think they should. When it comes to election reform, I believe that we should be very, very careful about any bill related to elections, and that we should always work with both the Democratic Party officials and constituents and the Republican Party officials. And if we can work out our differences and reach a consensus, we are more likely to pass bills. There are some bills that have been very, very detrimental to our purposes and to our priorities, that suppress voter turnout, that suppress people's confidence even in the election process. And I'm very concerned about those bills. Do we have problems with our elections? Yes. Can we improve our election process? Absolutely. But I would like to see us change the election code in such a way that it makes elections easier, more efficient, streamline the cost, and streamline the process so that it will be easier for everyone to vote, not more difficult. Why not send a ballot by mail application to every voter in Texas and allow every voter in Texas the opportunity to vote by mail? Why do you have to meet certain criteria? Why do we have to specify a short early voting period and then have everybody go to the polls on election day? I believe that we should do what some counties have already done and let people vote anywhere they want to. And really, we should liberalize and facilitate the election process to make voting easier for the people of Texas, not more difficult. I hope I answered your questions. You had several in one. Did I miss anything?
We miss a great deal, really. Well,
if I don't answer your question, let me know and I'll follow up.
Let's see. It's the ANCHIA resolution that I was talking about for the federal elections. Do you support a popular vote, by the way? SB 130 comes to mind.
What do you mean a popular vote?
Just eliminating the Electoral College.
Well, if you're asking me as a person, yes. If you're asking me as a senator, then I would say that I would have to wait and listen to the evidence on both sides and listen to the testimony and find out where my constituents stand on the process, because that is something that has really not been debated at all. We have received a number of letters about it over the years, but it's never been debated. And it's amazing how much we learn during hearings. Believe it or not, sometimes the testimony that we hear during hearings impacts us in such a way that we change our votes. And so that's why we have the hearing process, so that people can testify and present their perspective. So if you're asking me as a person, yes, I would support the popular vote. But if you're asking me how I would vote, I would wait to hear the testimony, and I would try to find out how the people I represent vote. Now, if you want me to guess how they feel, I'm guessing that my constituents would support the popular vote.
One last election question that people have is on online voter registration. Is that something that you support?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Next question is for Senator Eckhardt. As you finalize your legislative agenda and also, are taking a look at the agendas of your fellow Democratic colleagues, I know we only have limited information on what the governor wants to do this session, but are you finding much in the way of common ground? And if so, can you give us a taste of what that common ground is?
I'm going to keep looking for common grounds. I have said this before, and I will stand by this. Nobody is an enemy forever. We will find common ground. It has been a difficult row to hoe during COVID-19 in my local capacity. I found myself, and along with my local colleagues, Republican and Democrat, confused and even baited with regard to actions we took at the local level to keep our population safe. And as you saw recently, a carefully considered and difficult decision to declare a curfew over the New Year's weekend was slapped down by Republican leadership that I believe was politically motivated. It could not be motivated by the facts on the ground, which are dire. So while I have been crossing swords with the governor for some time on the quixotic leadership around COVID, I remain hopeful that in conflict, we will find common ground. In conflict, we will find the creativity and the common ground to move forward for the benefit of Texans. So yes, I do think we will find common ground. I'm an eternal optimist, and I think people who are in public service of whatever party go into public service because they want to serve the people of Texas. And service doesn't care what party you're in, if it's genuine. We'll find common ground, but we'll argue while looking for it.
Sounds about right. Actually, while we're on this subject, another question I wanted to ask you is, how concerned are you about certain other legislators injecting like toxic policy, toxic amendments into bills that we absolutely need to pass, such as COVID-related bills like healthcare, like education, things like that?
Well, Senator Zaffirini is probably the better person to ask since she's been there. But the lore about the legislature is it's easier to kill a bill than it is to pass a bill, and that just is. The Texas legislature is designed to only pass that which makes it through the gauntlet, and the gauntlet, the sieve, is very fine. So yeah. Stuff gets put in that isn't even thought of as a poison pill, I think, that often becomes a poison pill inadvertently. That's the way the apparatus is designed. Should it be that way? I would submit to you, and this may not be popular with some, but we should have a legislature that meets every year. And if we did, I think that we would be a more effective legislative branch. The legislative branch in Texas is very powerful, and yet it meets only every other year.
And if you want me to add to that, Ash, that's
Yep.
a very good question, because that happens all the time, all the time. And there's so many times that members will accept what you called a toxic amendment simply to pass an important bill. I, for one, will not. If there is an amendment that is absolutely toxic, there is no way I'm going to pass that bill, no matter how good it is. And I'll give you an example. Last time we had a bill that was very good for higher education. It was a good bill that allowed, I believe, and Chris Willen is on my staff is on the call with me, and Chris, correct me if I say this wrong, but if I recall correctly, the bill that I'm talking about allowed students at community colleges to also get the equivalent of Texas grants. And it was a very good bill and simple bill, and everybody supported it, but one of the senators had an amendment that would have just killed financial aid in effect for Dreamers. And it was relevant, and he had the votes. So I killed my bill. And then there are those who came to me. There were people who supported the bill passionately, who said, pass the bill, we'll fix it in the House. Do you think I'm going to pass a bill that would kill something for Dreamers in the Senate? There is no way that I would want my name associated with that. Plus, don't trust anybody who says, let's do this in the Senate and we'll fix it in the House. Because what if they didn't fix it in the House? Then what would I do? Not only that, say that the House did not, say that the House amended the bill in another way and sent it back to the Senate, that particular senator would still have the votes to amend the bill, to send it to conference committee and to get his amendment in. And the fact of the matter is he had the votes. My major bill in higher education years ago, major bill for higher education, also had a toxic amendment by then Senator Wentworth. And I pulled down my bill and I said that amendment is not relevant, it is not material, and it is not germane. And the parliamentarian ruled in his favor. When I knew that she was wrong, I pulled it down. And then I did my brief and I sent it to her, and she agreed with me that the amendment was not germane. So I brought up the bill again the second time. He brought up an amended amendment, which suddenly answered. It cured everything addressed in my brief. How did he get it? I don't know. Pulled down the bill again, my major bill in higher education. And finally I went to him and I said, you can't pass this in the House. The House will kill your amendment. They'll kill my bill if your amendment is in it. He said, I don't care. And he didn't. And so then I went back to him again and I said, if I find another bill that you can amend, will you withdraw your amendment from mine? And he said, yes. So I found him a bill by Senator Ogden. Senator Ogden brought up his bill. That senator attached his amendment. It went to the House. I brought up my bill. The senator removed his amendment from mine. Mine was passed by the House. Guess what? The other bill was amended in the House, and his amendment died. But he would have killed my bill to pass his amendment, even though he knew the votes were not there in the Senate. But I believe very, very strongly that we cannot pass a bill unless there is a seriously compelling reason that I cannot think about for any bill at this time, if there is a toxic amendment attached. It's not worth it. And the gamble of fixing it in the House is too great. You can see I feel pretty strongly about that.
No, I love it. The passion is all there. And I
see why I take notes whenever Judith is talking, because you learn so much. I mean,
yeah.
she's.
But on the other hand, the opposite can work too. I remember when there was a freshman senator, Republican senator, whose bill was just skewered in committee, and it was by the committee chair. And that senator came to me and said, what do I do? Will you offer an amendment on the floor so that I can pass it? And I said, no, the committee chair changed your bill, pass it in the Senate, fix it in the House. So she didn't utter a word. She passed the bill the way that it came out of committee, sent it to the House put it back the way she wanted it because she worked with her local state rep. It came back, he didn't even notice. It just swept through. So there are two sides to every strategy.
That is brilliant. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Yeah, one of the last questions I have for you before I hand off a couple of question spots to Arthur is what advice you have for especially first-time advocates who are looking to get involved in the session, make their voices heard, especially in the time of the pandemic when we're not sure what safety protocols will look like yet.
Is that a question for me?
It is indeed.
Good. Well, number one, be prepared. Be prepared. And before you approach any member of the legislature in the Senate or the House, and if you have a particular issue to address, know that person's position. Know if you are addressing friend or foe. For example, the biggest insult you can come and address me with is, would you support education? Would you support teachers? Anybody who asks me a question like that doesn't know me, doesn't know my record, and is absolutely not prepared. That is the dumbest question that I could be asked. And it happens all the time. People come in and, for example, they'll come to my office and say, you've got to support this bill. Or if you don't support this bill, we're not voting for you. Guess what? It's my bill. I don't even know it. And when someone is unprepared like that, they make such a bad impression and they're totally ineffective. So rule number one is be prepared. Know your subject. Second, know to whom you are speaking. Know that person's record. Third, don't expect any member to take any action that is detrimental to that member's constituency, because a member is expected to vote for his or her constituents in the counties that comprise that person's district. And that is absolutely critical. And in addition to that is know the process. Learn about the process, learn about the strategies, learn the tricks to the trade. And then be sure that you are helpful to the member and that you build relationships with the staff. For example, I have probably 5 staff members on this call. They're on the call because each one deals with a policy area. So if you talk to me and you say, well, I've got to talk to the senator about this, you and I can talk on the phone or in person or on Zoom, but when the day of the vote comes, who's going to make the recommendation to me regarding how to vote? The staff member. And will I remember what you said 3 months ago, 6 months ago? I hope so, but what if I don't? But if you talk with a staff member and you have compelling information, then that staff member is likely to consider that in making the recommendation. And that is absolutely critical. The other thing is always to provide information. I say never write a letter, for example, that is longer than 1 page. Never, never send a letter to a member of the legislature that is longer than 1 page. And I say, type it. Don't even think of a handwritten letter. A lot of people say, oh, it's personal. Yes, and do you have beautiful, perfect, legible, readable writing? Not many people do. So send 1-page letters and then include attachments so that you don't send a long letter, you send one letter with different attachments, all of which are informative and persuasive and easy to read, reader friendly. And whatever you do, remember that there are always exceptions to the rules. I love to tell the story of my staff member, Lola, who called me when I was on the floor of the Senate. And she said, Senator, you have to see this package. It is absolutely exquisite. It is a package of letters. And I said, Lola, I'll look at it when I get down there. And I didn't talk to her. I didn't let her bring it up to show it. She called me again. Senator, 200 letters, each a copy of the most beautiful letter in the most beautiful handwriting. And at the bottom of each, there is a signature, a printed name, an address, a precinct number, and a voter registration number. She said, this is perfect. I said, Lola, I'll see it when I get down there. Well, she couldn't stand it. She was so excited about this beautiful package of letters. And she finally brought up the letters and she said, I just had to show up to you. And I looked at it, I said, Lola, that is my mother's handwriting. 200 copies of a letter in my mother's handwriting from AARP. And so you see here, I'm telling you, don't send handwritten letters. Well, guess how I voted on that bill? So there are always exceptions to rules. And the next day, I got in the mail a copy of the letter from my mother and in a separate envelope, the same letter from my father. But you see, my mother knew exactly what she was doing. Exactly. So whatever people tell you, including me, there are always exceptions. And the key to the story is adapt, analyze, think it through. To whom are you speaking? What is the subject? What is that person's position? And what can you do not only to be informative, but also to be persuasive? I hope that helped.
That definitely helps. Both senators, we thank you for your time. We're kind of up at the end of this meeting. We have time for one more question. There are a lot of questions that are on everyone's minds. There's a lot weighing on our hearts, but having the two of you representing us sure does make that burden a little easier to deal with. So we have a lot of information in the comments of people who want to ask specific questions of specific policy members, of specific senators. But one last one to rule them all is on the STAR test. Senator Eckhardt, do you have any thoughts on STAR testing? What's your position on A through F ratings? How are we going to address these issues on the STAR test in particular?
I think that the value of the STAR test is really as a diagnostic, not for a specific student. And I do see value in the STAR test as a diagnostic for internal use in terms of gauging how well your own initiatives, the school district's own initiatives, are operating. But I think that during COVID, we should take a pass on the STAR test. I would not advocate getting rid of the STAR test because those sorts of benchmarks are really valuable from a managerial standpoint, but they are being, their use is being perverted. So I think that we need to address that.
There was one bill in particular, I guess that was on the House side. HB 999 allows for ICGs for everyone without a committee to help remove high stakes issues. I'm not sure whose bill that is. Are there any particular members of the other chamber or the other party that you look forward to working with on these issues?
I look forward to working with lots of folks on the other side. One of the Central Texas delegation who I've worked with very closely in our previous local incarnations is John Cyrier. John and I both represent the Bastrop area, and he's in the House, and I really enjoy working with John. There's also some good folks on our side of in the Senate chamber who I also look forward to working with. I have worked with Senator Kel Seliger a lot when I was the chair of the Conference of Urban Counties, and he was a real champion of local issues. Of course, he's been punished for being a champion, and I look forward to working with him again. He's a very principled senator. I look forward to working with Senator Nichols, who has a deep knowledge on highway infrastructure, funding, and broadband, two areas of keen interest and to me, and I've also had considerable experience in transportation, finance, and policy. So I look forward to working with him as well. And that's just to name a few.
Senator Eckhardt, do you look forward to the old school rules of the Senate? I know it's going to be a unique year, but any thoughts on entering such a hallowed chamber?
It is a historical institution for which I have deep, deep respect. My father was in the Texas legislature many decades ago, 40 years ago, more than 40 years ago. My mother actually worked for Patsy Spa, who is the Secretary of the Senate at a certain point. So I have deep respect for the institution. And I also recognize that we do need to bring the institution into the 21st century. I was hoping COVID, one silver lining in COVID would be that we would get bootstrapped in. We are not making huge adaptations, but I will continue to work on that. The House has moved a little faster at modernizing than the Senate has, but we'll keep working at it. I think we can preserve the history of the institution and its beautiful traditions, and also become more effective and more efficient and more fair, accessible, transparent through some of the technologies that have become standard operating procedure for other deliberative bodies.
Okay, well, Katie and Charlie, are you ready to take us home?
I am. I thought I'd spare everybody Charlie's screams of elation at having two such amazing public servants representing us in the Senate. That's what we'll call them. But I wanted to thank Ash and Arthur for all your work on the Legislative Task Force. A quick reminder, there's information in the chat. We'll drop it in again about how to get involved in our legislative efforts this session. Travis County plays a unique role when it comes to being engaged at the Capitol. And I think that's going to be even more important than ever, given what we're seeing from our Republican obstructionists when it comes to pandemically appropriate advocacy and kind of making the rules to where it benefits them the most, unfortunately. So we're very lucky to have such open doors from both of our senators. And so join the Legislative Task Force. Information is in the chat for that. Also, if you're interested in staying involved, when we get people elected, it's really when the rubber hits the road that policy is being made. And that's where you can affect change when it comes to criminal justice issues, reproductive rights, climate change, education, healthcare accessibility, renting, and economic and issues of equity. And so we really encourage you to stay involved either with the Legislative Task Force, joining one of our amazing Democratic clubs, which are geographically as well as identity specific. And then we also have openings for some precinct chairs. So if you're interested in becoming a precinct chair, we have some openings and would love to have your voice involved in the party. And then last reminder, you can always support the Travis County Democratic Party efforts with a donation. This year, we are going to be taking on some immense challenges, and we are not going to shy away from the fact that, one, we are not the Republican Party. The difference can be more clear, more black and white, that we are not the Republican Party. And when it comes to supporting the voice and will of people and the respect of vote and voting accessibility. But we have work to do as a party too, to be more representative, to be more inclusive. And so we are excited about the work when it comes to DEI consultants coming in with us to make sure that we are not just a representative party, but a party that's pushing forward communities of color, and also the year-round organizing. So that way, whether you live in Cedar Park or Pflugerville or below the Y at Oak Hill or in Del Valley, you are hearing from your Democratic Party on issues that you care about and that we've asked you what issues you care about. And so having community organizers on the ground year-round is going to be a huge benefit, not just to the amazing elected officials who we want to see reelected each 2 years, but also to the issues that we care about. So if you're a renter and you're concerned about being able to pay rent during the pandemic, if you are a musician or someone who works in the restaurant industry and you have lost a job or not getting the same number of hours due to the pandemic, we are here to represent you. And so I'm so thankful to our Legislative Task Force. I'm so thankful to our senators for joining us today and your staffs for putting yourself out there during this pandemic to serve the people of Texas. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And please, get involved with the Travis County Democratic Party. We're not ashamed to say that we can do things a little bit better, but we will always do better with your voice included. So thank you so much, and everyone have a great and safe evening and rest of your week. And one last reminder, we do have some more upcoming events. January 10th, we have a similar panel from all of our state representatives talking about what's going to happen in the House side of the legislature. And so it's going to be a full House. We have all 6 state reps. Very excited about that. And then also we are joining Blue Action Democrats for a town hall with Congressman Lloyd Doggett, who just joined the resolution calling for Donald Trump's impeachment. So I'm sure he's going to have a lot to say on Saturday, and people are going to, or sorry, on Sunday, and you're going to want to hear from him. So join us on January 10th for that at 2 o'clock, and for the full House legislative panel discussion at 5:30 on January 10th. Thank you all.